I'm Angie.
And I'm Jamie.
I bet you're wondering why we are dressed like superheroes.
Yeah, I'm wondering. Why?
It's because therapists truly are superheroes.
His idea was spandex. I'm looking at you, Angie.
Okay, yes, and I don't necessarily have the body for it, but that doesn't matter because your self-worth is not wrapped up in what society says.
Welcome to the Shrink Show.
Get on my back.
Hi, friends.
I love that you're holding your mug. Hi!
Did you see the delay? I can't do that.
I know. Let's just
Maybe that's why we didn't have this.
Perhaps.
Hi, friends.
Hi! Oh my gosh, it's awful. So we tried to do a new thing and face the camera towards us.
But it's trippy.
Simply because we wanted to make sure that we did have the video working. Because how many times have we not had video, you YouTube subscribers? Oh my God, I'm not drunk.
She's drunk.
Oh, I might be. Who knows? I think I'm drunk on life. Anyway, we just had the most incredible time. I mean, literally, folks.
We made a new best friend, you guys.
We did.
We want you to meet her too because she will be your new best friend.
And her life, we decided, should be a Hallmark.
No, an HBO special.
HBO special, something. She needs to write a memoir. She needs to get her life story out there. It is empowering. It is impactful. It is inspiring. There are so many elements to it. She's changing the world, folks.
And it's unheard of, yet happens all the time, we learned.
And are angry about.
Yes. So our guest today is Cathy Lucas.
Cathy Lucas, we love you.
She is sharing her story of being a child bride.
Yes.
In America. And just so we're clear, because I think some people who we even were asking just generalities if you know about this topic had no clue that this happens locally. Legal in 43 states, another fun fact. But if you want to learn more fun facts about just underage marriage being legal in America and
how fucking powerful and strong women are.
Right. That's essentially what we learned in the end.
Right. Then you need to listen to what Cathy has to offer because she's incredible. Also, don't forget, like, share, subscribe. We love you so much, and we can't do this without you.
Yes. Any reviews on Apple, we greatly appreciate.
And honestly, with this episode, if you could share, because the more this message gets out there, the more impactful this can be on our society and community, and we can save hundreds of thousands of child brides. Because what was that, 200,000 over the last 2 years?
Over the last 20 years? Over the last 20 years, 200,000.
Child brides. Like, fuck that. This is recent, folks. So anyway.
Yeah. So let's spread the news so we can help shift the conversation and what's happening legislatively and just so we can become aware that this is happening locally.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, guys. We love you.
Bye. Enjoy. Bye.
I guess not bye, right?
I know.
Enjoy. I don't know, Jamie, if you had anywhere in particular to begin or if Cathy you did, but I am just already fascinated. Like, I just want to hear you talk. Like,
Right. We do. So Cathy, because I'm on the Facebook group, obviously, where I found you. And then I sent a screenshot to Angie, and I was like, oh, my God, because Angie has ADHD. So I know to tell her about our guests the day before, because otherwise she won't retain it. So last night at like 8 p.m., I'm like, here's our guest, just so you know, we're filming tomorrow. But she's like, oh, my God. We were both like, we just have questions. I
actually think my exact verbatim text back was, holy fuck, she's a boss.
Yes, it was that. That'll probably be our intro.
Oh, and this is actually whiskey, y'all. So
yes.
Ours is so we were feeling spicy today because we naturally have gin and tonic, or gin and ginger beer, and we didn't have the ginger beer, so we had margaritas, but it was too sweet, so we decided to run to the gas station and get some ginger beer. So it's margarita, gin, and ginger beer.
Cathy, your story. I mean, just the line of child bride, that alone makes you want to be like, oh my God, tell me more. And Jamie had asked her family if they had any questions, and she got like 30
Paragraphs. Yeah.
questions.
Okay. I love to talk and I'm an open book. I've been through a lot of therapy. Still go to therapy. Will probably always go to therapy. Um, and I'm, I want to, I want my story to show other people. Number one, I want my story to affect the laws in this country.
Yes.
And number two, I want my story to inspire other people to know that we're strong. Like we're strong.
Yes.
And although I may not say I would choose to go through everything again necessarily, but like I said earlier, I wouldn't also go back, and I don't know what I would change if I could. I wouldn't wish it
Right.
on other people, obviously, or I wouldn't be trying to get the laws changed. But
Yeah.
So, can you speak briefly about the laws? Because then I really want you to go into your story, but I think it's important to set that stage for
Yeah.
anyone who may not, if they're like me and they're just clicking and not reading.
Right. Well, and I mean, straight up, the first question my husband said was, well, what does that even mean? Like child bride, child
Like, how does that
marriage.
happen?
Yeah,
Yeah.
what does that even mean? So even just starting off with the definition and then the laws, and then we'll go down memory lane.
okay. What it means is to us that are advocates for against child marriage in the U.S. Anyone under 18, a minor, is a child. By legal definition, anyone under 18 is a child. So child marriage, by definition, is anyone under 18. And what we want to do is, we want a law. Federally would be nice. Good luck with that, but 18, no exceptions, because um, anyone under 18, there's no other legal decision like that they can make, even with parental consent. You can't take your child and say, I want this kid's getting on my nerves and I want to put him in the military when he's 14 or 15 or 17. You can't do that.
I can't take my kid to the bar and say he's old enough to
Yeah.
drink, go ahead and let him.
Exactly. Or buy cigarettes or vote, or I don't care how mature. And child marriage, some with no lower limits, is still legal in 43 US states.
How many states is it enforced? Do you think, like that it's not enforced? That it's still really happening? Because I can tell you, even though it's legal, I would call CPS.
Every state. I mean, every state that it's legal, it's happening. And it's used in human trafficking. That's another whole block of it. But
that's a whole nother block. Yeah.
Let's take Indiana, where I live. I live in Indiana.
Okay.
Indiana's laws are 17 and above, so we're still not at 18. So they're like, oh, we'll be good. We'll go to 17. But you can get judicial exceptions.
What does that mean?
Means that a couple can go before a judge. It's usually minor girls and adult men. I married a 20-year-old when I was 14. It's usually, he was almost 20. But it's usually adult men and minor girls. And they can go before a judge and say, we have this reason we want to get married. Maybe she's pregnant. Maybe, the parents have to be there. Usually both parents are not there, but we have interviewed dozens of girls that got judicial exception in states that don't allow it under 18, but they have judicial exceptions. And every one of them said they were coerced and lied. We have not found one girl that said she felt comfortable standing in front of a judge with this man beside her saying, I don't want to do this. I didn't feel comfortable saying I didn't want to do this. I didn't have to have judicial exception because my mom took me to Kentucky, but
yeah, people, you can cross state lines to do this.
Yes.
Right.
Yes, which is another big problem because Indiana might be 17, Michigan and Illinois way younger.
What's the youngest
Michigan's
age?
12.
12.
California's 12. Some states have no lower age limit.
So if the parent makes that decision and coerces the child, like, I guess, does the child have to agree?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's one of the senators here in Indiana and I go.
No, I agree because I mean, I'm sorry. At 14, I couldn't even tell my best friend I didn't like her outfit. Like, let's be honest.
Yes, and I keep having one of the lawmakers here in Indiana, and he's a Harvard-educated attorney, and he's a senator. He's a federal senator, and he tells me every time we have this discussion is, well, the child has to consent as well.
Right, because the child is so developmentally with it.
Well, children can't legally consent to anything. Like, he's a Harvard-educated attorney. If you're under 18, you can't get a mortgage. You can't drive. You cannot consent.
Yeah, they can't get a credit
legally.
card. They can't. Yeah.
And
You can't even get an apartment. You can't do anything.
Yeah.
you can't sign a lease. You can't do anything except get married.
How fucked up is that?
Do you have, because again, I feel like we have to paint a picture. Do you have statistics or folks that you've worked with, the youngest age?
The youngest I've worked with is 13.
That she got married at 13?
And you were 14. Yeah.
Yeah.
And what, and like, how large of an age gap is an average age gap?
I think the average age gap is 9 years. Is average. But one of, like, Genevieve that started the Resiliency Foundation, her age gap was she was 15, I think, and he was in his 30s. And he was her molester, and her mom forced her to marry him so he didn't get in trouble and go to jail.
Because
that is why?
Yeah, and that makes the most sense to me as to why this would occur. And it's so sick.
Well, yeah, I guess that's my next question is, why does this happen? Like, for what reason do these consenting parents bring their children in front of a judge and say, yes, please?
Mm-hmm. And in states it's legal. You don't have to go to a judge. You just go to the clerk's office and everybody signs and you're done. That's what happened with me. The reasons are, well, some of them they vary because of culture, religion. There's like some to protect a molester, some to hide incest. In some Southern ethnic cultures, that's a biggie. Some they will say it's religious reasons, which that's one reason that's so hard in some states to get this, to get it illegal, is they claim religious freedom, but child marriage is not officially sanctioned by any mainstream religion. None. Not Islam, not Christian, none. It is not. There is no creed in any mainstream religion that sanctions child marriage. So that's not a valid argument.
And there's no need for it, Cathy. That's the thing. There's zero need. I mean, I think of you at 14, and I don't want to take too much because I really want to hear your story, but I think of you at 14, now you're married, you can't open your own checking account. Can you even go to the fucking courthouse and file that you want a divorce? Like, at this point, you are now trapped for at least the next 4 years.
You can't go to a domestic violence shelter.
Right.
Yes, and in Nebraska, you're not an adult until you're 19.
Right. Well, and then, because that's where we're at. So my question too, even what you just said, so minors can say they want to get married like you did, but you cannot go and file for divorce.
Nope.
And legal law people don't see that doesn't make any sense.
Like they don't see that that's totally screwed up.
I mean, I'm not a mathematician, but something is not balanced, okay?
They don't care. This isn't making anybody any money. This is hiding things that they don't want revealed. This is, look, old white men in charge. So
what?
Oh my God, it makes me want to vomit.
I'm raging.
I know.
I
Cathy,
have a lot of
before
opinions.
we take over.
Sorry, Cathy.
I want everybody to hear your story because I think you'll answer a lot of the questions, and I just have a feeling it's so incredibly impactful. So please, stage is yours. We will, mainly me. I'm the one that talks too
I'll
much.
preface mine too by saying that I will say mine's probably a best case scenario. And I think that's why showing that diversity of child brides is important, because I don't care how good your situation is. Nobody's ready to run a household and have children at 14. I had my daughter at 15. I had 3 kids before I was 22. I did not ever step foot in a high school. I got married the day I should have graduated 8th grade. So, and I had a support system because I was raised in a very huge family. And my mom had 10 sisters, and we lived in Kentucky, but we kind of migrated to Indiana for work. My grandfather came up here to work in the auto industry, and my dad followed because they worked in the coal mines, and they wanted to get out of that, which a lot of people in Kentucky did. And we were very fundamentalist religious. We were in a very conservative evangelical religion. And so with the Appalachian, mindset, and you couple that with the religious aspect of it. My mom got married at 16. I think my grandmother was 13.
Oh, so it's generational.
Like 25. Like mine was in the 70s when people didn't think this happened.
And was this because of your religion, or was this just because this was like what generationally happens in your family?
It was not a religious, it was not because of the religion. I think the religion the mindset of the religion led to it, because I was raised that women were only made for marriage and having babies. And that's what that's what we were made. That's what we were brought up to believe, is you are just going to get married and have kids. And that's your godly, womanly duty is to do this. So the sooner you do that, the safer they see you as being.
Well, it wasn't until the 60s that women could even open their own checking account.
You couldn't get a credit in the 70s. You still had to have your credit cards in your husband's or your dad's name. You couldn't even get a credit card in the 70s. But I could get married in 1977.
Well, because you need a protector, right?
Right. Yeah. So religion played a part in the mindset. Okay. It wasn't because, and we lived in a very almost communal situation as a family, not as a church. So it was kind of a lot of things that come together. And the man that I married went to our church, which was also seen as another safe thing, is he was interested in me. My mom let me go out with him when I was 13. He asked me to marry him. I said yes. 6 weeks on my 14th birthday. 6 weeks after I went out with this man. I was 13 and 14.
And he was what, like 19?
This is 18? Why we have parents. But my mom had a very traumatic life, very traumatic childhood. She's a trauma child, like at this generational trauma that comes into play here. And that's what people need to understand about the legalities of this, is it's only perpetuating that generational trauma, generational poverty. My story's not the norm. Like, I think it's 85 to 90% of child marriages that under 18 child marriages end in divorce. And the likelihood of domestic violence, poverty, all those things go through the roof with underage marriage. Even if it's just think if it's 2 kids, what likelihood that they're going to be successful with no education. The people don't realize the economic impact on us as a society, because of things like child marriage, because nobody has the ability to dig themselves out of that usually.
Well, and how often is it 2 kids? I bet that's probably the rarity. And more often it's the adult with the child, which in and of itself is an imbalance, because you're a grown up. So I have to rely on you because I am a child.
And what it does is becomes a guardianship situation.
Yeah.
When I got married at 14, My husband was almost 20, and he withdrew me from high school. And he had to legally withdraw me from high school. He had to sign for me to get my driver's license. He had to sign for me to get prenatal care with my daughter when I was 15.
I'm sorry. If some guy came to because I work at a school. If some pardon my French, but if some motherfucker came in and was like, I'm withdrawing my wife, I'd be like, the fuck? What? Like, no.
Angie's a school social worker, so she would have strong opinions.
I would have so many words. So many words.
My mom got a letter of truancy because I didn't show up for high school because I'd got married the day I should have graduated 8th grade. So she brings this letter over to my house, which I didn't have a phone. I didn't have a car because I couldn't drive. It was the first time I'd lived outside of my family little community on our street in Indianapolis. And she brings this truancy letter over, and I was like, my husband had to take me to school, and I had to go in and talk to the principal, and he had to sign to withdraw me from high school because he didn't want me going to high school.
Right. He doesn't want you educated.
Right. Well, yeah. And you had to talk to the principal too, or did just your husband?
No, I went in first, actually. My mom came and got me and took me, and I got out of the car and went in with the letter, and the principal was like, well, we can't really have you going to school if you're married. Like, you need to be a wife. And
oh my God.
That's what the principal said?
Yeah. And then
oh my God, Cathy, I want to kick doors down right now.
I'm just a boiling vat of rage this entire time. I'm just listening and raging over here. It's fine.
And so he said, well, your husband has to come back in and consent because he's your guardian now. But he has to come in and formally withdraw you from, because my mom couldn't do it because I was married. And so I think my mom went in and talked to him, like had my little brother in tow. And, but my husband had to go back in and officially sign the papers to withdraw me from high school. And then when I got my driver's license later, he had to go sign for me to teach me to drive and take me to get driver's license. And then when I got pregnant, my daughter was born about a year after we were married, and he had to take me to the doctor and give consent for me to get health care.
So this first year of marriage so far and having a child, riveting. Not being in high school, just making sure I'm up to date with these facts. What, for you, that 14-year-old, 15-year-old Cathy, what were you thinking, feeling like? Because to you, this is normal life. Is that what you were thinking or feeling, or what was happening in your mind, in your perspective?
Well, backing up a little bit to explain this part, I tried to back out of the marriage three to at least 3 times because we got engaged in January on my birthday, 14th birthday, and then we got married. My mom said that we had to wait at least till I finished 8th grade because education is important.
Right. Only until 8th grade.
Right.
You got to get your 8th grade education. So we waited till June and went. But in that time period, I would go to school, and my friends would be like, you can't get married. We're going to go to high school. We're going to go to ball games. We're going to have fun. I would get all excited. Like, I don't want to get married. I want to get, and then I would go tell him. And I did not if you don't have a relationship with your parents where you can go and say, look, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do, because once we went and got permission, the ball was rolling. It was rolling toward June. And I just did not have the power. People don't realize that we're not raised with power, what it's like to not have any. And a lot of kids don't have any power, and they don't have a voice. And I went to him and would say, I don't want to get married. I don't want to marry you. I'm not ready. I'm 14 and you're 20. And he would be like, he would cry and beg and threaten to kill himself.
Oh, of course.
And yeah. And I had to marry him. He just loved me so much, and he couldn't live without me, and he was going to kill himself. I had to marry him. And then I would get, cry and I'd be like, okay, like don't do that. So then I'd go tell my friend. It was just this whole thing for 6 months of trying to figure out how not to do this.
Yeah. So it's like
Cathy,
6 straight months of emotional abuse
like,
and
how
mental
stressful.
abuse. Right.
And that is classic domestic violence behavior.
Gaslighting,
Mhm.
right?
You know, that it's that controlling, I'm gonna make you feel guilty, and it's all about you feeling the shame,
Yeah,
like
'cause it's
you're the
your
bad
fault.
person. And I just want all of the power and control over you.
And as a girl in that system, in that society, tradition, whatever you want to call it, you don't have any power anyway. Like you're literally there to serve. Literally. I mean, I had experienced molestation. I had experienced, my dad was an alcoholic. God rest his soul. He just passed last week, and a lot of healing happened with my dad over the years. But I was raised in a very volatile home. And then, you have this underlying, facade to keep up for the religion, because nobody's perfect, but you got to act like it. I don't know how people at our church felt because that was kept from me. I imagine there was probably people there that would protest because we had moved from Kentucky to Indiana and it was a little bit more progressive. Not a lot, but our pastor was on board. He tried to get a waiver for me to get married in Indiana with a judge that he knew. He tried to get a judicial exception made here, and the judge said no. He wouldn't approve. He said no. He told him a 14-year-old doesn't need to be getting married, period. He said he wouldn't even approved it if I was pregnant. So my mom took us to Kentucky.
So mom had her eye on the prize. That's what it sounds like.
Oh yeah. Oh my then soon to be husband. When we heard that we couldn't get a marriage license here, he was a mental wreck. I remember vividly sitting in my mother's living room of my house at the time, me, my mom, the pastor, and him, and them saying, the judge said no, and me feeling relief, like, oh, this isn't going to happen. Like it can't happen. And then they're like, well, we'll go to, and my soon to be my boyfriend was bawling, like, oh, we gotta get my lover, and all this. And I'm like, who's the adult here? If there's an adult in the room, please stand up.
Well, and what kind of, I don't want to speak for you, but in putting myself in your shoes in that moment, God, the betrayal I would feel by my parents who are like, oh, but we'll find another way. Like, oh man.
It was just my mom. My dad wasn't involved. He was off working and drinking and stuff like that. Like he wasn't involved. But my mom was the homemaker and she stayed home and took care of the kids. There was 4 of us, my 2 sisters and brother. And we lived next door to my grandmother. And most of my mom's sisters lived on our same street. All my cousins, I have 40 first cousins.
How much older is your grandmother than you?
How much older was my grandmother than me? I don't know. Probably, well, my mom was one of the older kids. She was the 3rd one, and she was probably born when my grandmother was 15 or 16, because my grandmother had 12 kids and by the time she was 30.
Oh.
I had a stepson. By the time I was...
My mom had fertility issues, and she didn't have me till she was 20.
Oh, man.
That's probably because she was a developing child.
But she was 16, and she had like at least four lost pregnancies before me.
Okay, so then your grandma is only like 35 years older than you.
Right.
Probably.
So then,
yeah, about that. Which is about how much older. I think, how old was I? I'm only 37 years old. I was a grandma at 37.
Now my grandma was a grandma at 40, which...
is that right? I have a 23-year-old granddaughter.
I don't know how old you are.
60.
So, yep.
Yeah, I just turned 60.
Did this similar story happen to your siblings? You said you had two sisters.
No. Well, my sister, they both got married. I think one was 19 and one was 18. I think so, right in there, 18 and 19.
Okay.
My brother was 19. I mean, young married. Getting married young in my family was not that odd. Like it was just not that unusual because a lot of people, especially my cousins in Kentucky, they all got married really young. There's a lot of that in my family.
It's so funny because my grandma got married at 17 and had kids at 18, 19, and 20. And my mom got married at 19 and had kids at 20 and 21. And I remember growing up thinking, I want to get married young because I want to have my kids young because I liked having my grandma and great grandma and everyone around. It Hearing it from this like flip side, I'm like, what the fuck, like this.
And it goes back to what I said earlier is that I look at this as something I got to experience. It was traumatic. It was like hell at times. But I had my daughter, I mean, who gets to experience their kids at 15? And I knew the gravity of being a mother as soon as that baby was born. Like I felt it. I was a 15-year-old mom, so that's that. But I also had help. This is where the best case scenario comes in. Like I'm before my daughter was born, we moved back to the same street with my mom and my aunts and my big huge family. So I had always been around babies. I had always been around. I learned to cook when I was little. I could do these things physically, and I looked physically capable. I looked older than I was because that's how we lived. We lived learning life skills, and we lived, especially the women. The men went to work and the women ran the world, So I really come from a background of very long line of the strongest women I've ever met because the things they survived in Appalachia growing up, like you would not think a human could do it.
So you and your husband, when you had your first kiddo, and you said you had other kiddos too right after. What was the relationship like during that time? Like when you're a teenager?
With my husband? Well, at the beginning, when I first got married and we moved away we just moved maybe 5 miles from my family, but I couldn't drive and I didn't have a phone or anything. So that might as well been. I could walk, like there was times I would walk over there or my mom would come and get me or something, but it was scary. We lived in a not great area, like in a trailer park, and neighbors would fight. I'd just never been around strangers before. And we were raised to be afraid of everybody except for our religion, people that in our church and my family. So I already had a lot of fear, and I feared God terribly because if you step out of line, you're going to go to hell. And so yes, yeah. Like it was. I was raised. The foundation of my upbringing was fear. And that's been the hardest thing to overcome with this. And bravery. Like the thing is, it's like it's such a human paradox that you're raised with all this fear and stuff, but then you have to be the most fierce woman that you can't be because you have to survive. And you have to run a household at 15, and you have to raise kids at 15 and have a miscarriage at 17 and have a baby at 18, another baby at 21, and decide you want to get an education and you're going to go against everybody to do it.
I always tell my daughter, you can't be brave if you aren't afraid.
Yeah.
So look at you, fucking being so goddamn brave. I'm so proud of you already. I'm so proud of you. Look at you.
Yeah.
You're triumphant. So you have all these kids and you're living in fear, but you also have that support. I can only imagine what battle you had within your own mind of should I stay or should I go? Like, what did that look like?
I did not have that because divorce wasn't allowed in our religion. We could not get a divorce. So.
Oh no, I mean before you did get the divorce.
Yeah, before I got the divorce. Like I was in that marriage 15 years. And
when you started contemplating that, what did that look like?
Talk about fear. That's when the fear came in, really. Like, that was the biggest fear that I had. And we had 15 years was rocky and hard, and he didn't get any less manipulative and verbally abusive and, things like that. So, but that first year until we moved back near my family was scary because I was alone and I didn't know. But I knew to get up every morning and clean my house, and I knew to have dinner ready when he got home. And this had been my life anyway. It just transferred over to myself instead of helping my mom. But I didn't. So I had 3 kids, and then when I really always wanted an education, like I really just wanted an education. I read, and I would go to the library and get books, and because we lived within walking distance, that's what I would do during the day because I didn't have anything else to do but watch TV. I remember the day Elvis died, I was watching Days of Our Lives, and it came across the bottom of the screen. I'll never forget it because I watched
soap operas.
I watched soap operas and went to the library. And there was a convenience store right there that I could stop and get candy. So.
Oh, because you're still a kid.
Yeah. So, but I wanted an education. So when my 3rd child, Jake, was born, I went to a community center near our house and got a GED. I took classes and got my GED. And
Did
then
your husband know about that?
Huh?
Did your husband know about that?
Yeah. I think me and like one of my friends or cousins or somebody did it. And we just went and got our high school diploma. And then when my son went to kindergarten, I went to college. That's when the fun started.
How old were you?
So I told my family I was going to go to college, and they're like, you can't do that. You're not smart enough to do that. You've never even been to high school. And my husband said I could go if I didn't let it interfere with my wifely duties.
Oh, right. Wow.
Yeah. So I still had to make sure he had dinner on the table when he got home every night. I've worked a part-time jobs to help pay for it. Had 3 kids in school. My mom would help out. They would get off at her house off the bus sometimes, and I would run get them and come home and do everything at home and clean and cook before he got home. So he couldn't be he let it be known he could not be inconvenienced by this.
Oh my God, Cathy, all I hear is oppression, 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 oppression. I mean, seriously, so the episode came out recently is basically me crying, saying, I'm so overwhelmed, and life and trying to be a mom and do all these things, and
you were crushing it.
You were crushing it,
but not in a good way. I'm not.
You're
crushing it out of survival, not out of,
Yeah, it feels so sad and lonely.
Mm-hmm. But I felt, what though, at that time, I felt the most alive.
Because you were doing something for you?
Yes, I was doing. That's what I did not do this at all with the intent of ending my marriage when I got my degree. That wasn't my intent. I got accused of that later when it happened, but whatever. I've been accused of worse. I've done worse.
You're like, I've been through fucking worse. Come at me, bro.
Oh my gosh.
So I went to college, and it was just like the world opened up to me, literally. Like when I walked onto the campus in Indianapolis, I had never driven downtown before. I had never even driven my car outside of close to my neighborhood. And I drove to the campus and parked. It seemed overwhelming, to say the least. It was so huge. And I was terrified because I expected to encounter all these mean people. I really thought I was walking into hell, because that's how the world was described to us, because they're worldly. There's all this, debauchery out here going on. And,
don't fall into that secular stuff.
I was just I don't want to see orgies. I just don't.
They're happening on the corner in gas stations, walking to Walgreens. Shit, there's an orgy.
Not again. How old were you?
So like things on fire, like I don't know what I expected, but not what I got. But
Cathy, I think we've asked this question like 4 times. So at this point,
but there's a delay.
There is a delay. No, it's not on you. At this point now, it's a personal. I have to know. Okay. How old were you when you went to college?
I would have been 26 or 7.
26 or 7. Also, and I don't know if you're going to get to this, but I am curious what degree you chose and how you chose it.
I got a medical imaging degree, so I had to take radiation physics. I don't know why I chose that.
You're a scientist. That's all I heard.
What are you doing here?
You're like, I've seen my children's x-rays and all sorts of stuff. I can do that shit.
I can do that.
So I was looking, I wanted a degree, and I wanted one that wasn't very, like I wanted an associate's degree, and I wanted something that paid well. And so I got like magazine, I went and got magazines, and I looked through these career magazines, and there was an article that said the top 10 2-year degrees that pay the best. And one was nursing. And I was like, I don't really want to do nursing, but I would like something medical. I would be okay with that. But I just didn't, because in my mind, a nurse was like a bedside nurse. Like back that there wasn't a lot, I didn't know what it wasn't like I could get to a career fair. But there was one that was medical imaging. And it was, at that time, it was an associate. You could start with an associate's degree. And so I was like, oh, that sounds good. I'm going to do that. And I did.
How often do we make decisions like this? Honestly, though, like in real life, like we're just, you know what? Cool. Yep. Mm-hmm. That sounds great.
That seems to make money.
It's like I wanted a degree. I wanted a job that paid well. I thought I honestly, at the time that I did it, I wanted to advance our family. Like I wanted to help. Like my kids were in school. It would have been okay if I worked then at that point, because it was getting feminism and stuff was kicking in.
Thank God.
Whoa.
I could get a job if I wanted and work part. But my husband said, well, if you get that degree, he wanted me to work in a doctor's office. He didn't want me to work at the hospital because he thought that was too much for a woman to work. And when I got into school, I did my clinicals at a downtown Indianapolis level 1 trauma center, and I fell in love with trauma.
Oh my gosh, I know. I love the emergency room so much.
And I worked in the emergency department, and I loved it. And I was graduated number 3 in my class, and the hospital offered me a job in the emergency department, and my husband wouldn't let me take it.
Oh,
so you didn't take it?
Nope. And I didn't want to work at a doctor's office x-raying hands. So he conceded to let me take a job at a hospital in the small county hospital out here, about 30 minutes west of Indianapolis, because it was safer. Like it was safer as far as, because by the time I graduated, we were on our way to divorce.
And when you say on your way to divorce, meaning you had conversations, or meaning that you were very much thinking that in your mind?
We had conversations. I had told him that I didn't love him and I wanted a divorce. And we were separated 3 times my senior year of college. And my church would show up, and my mom would show up, and he would cry, and the same stuff would start. And you have to take him back. You're going to go to hell. You can't get a divorce. You can't. And I had actually left that church already, went to what I thought was a better church that ended up being an actual cult. I jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. But so I joined this other church, thinking I was getting more progressive religious, stuff. No, it was terrible. I was there about 2 years, and in the midst of that is when I got my divorce and then when I was done, finally I was done. I was done with all of them. I was like, fuck y'all. Like, because I was just had enough of being told what to do. So I had this church tell me what to do. I had my family tell me what to do. I had this man tell me what to do. I had this other church tell me what to do. They're like, you're everybody. You're going to hell. If you leave here, if you don't come here, you're going to hell. If you do this, you're going to. I'm like, you know what? Hell, here I come.
Right. Hell might be better than this bullshit that I'm fucking dealing with.
Hell seems nice. Hell seems nice.
Yeah.
Here we go.
Seems warm. So, this shit seems cold.
So when you were a senior in college, wait, how old were your kiddos at this time?
They were, this would have been 91, was this 90? I actually got a divorce in 92. So the youngest was 7. Jake was 7. Yeah, and then the older 2, Adam was like 11 and Jessica would have been like 13. And another thing that was a catalyst for this, when my daughter,
I was about to ask, like, did they try to get your daughter married?
No, they didn't try to get my daughter married. I would have killed people. But and like I said, I wouldn't say they tried to get me married. They just didn't step in and stop it. But when my daughter when she started getting up 12 and 13, I was like, what in the world? Like, what did I do? Because I'd never seen myself as a child, ever. I was never treated like, my mom always told me that I was born an adult, but my mom relied on me emotionally a lot because she's very young emotionally, because she is very stunted from emotional trauma. And her and my dad, they did not have a great relationship. They were married 65 years when he died last week. And they made that their life, and that I'm not judging that. You know, they kept it together. They that's their story. But it was a lot of them. I was the oldest, and there was a lot of emotional responsibility on me my whole life.
I believe it.
And so that, honestly though, that's what equipped me to be a wife at 14 years old.
Well, and that's probably why you looked older than your age when you got married, because you
acted it.
You had to.
It's such a, it's like thinking about this all now, because now I'm 60 and I'm like, you do whatever, blah, 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 but that's always been my personality, but I had to keep that, but then as soon as it was needed by somebody, they would access it until they didn't need it. And then I needed to calm it down.
Right.
Like I was too much then until somebody needed my power.
So what kind of narrative did you provide your daughter?
Or all of your kids?
Well, I'm more curious about her daughter and yes, all of the kids, but your daughter that you had at 15, because you were so young and because the narrative of women was so less than and so second.
Your only role is to get married and have kids. So how did you raise her?
Because I think of how I empower and encourage my daughter, so I'm just curious.
Well, of course, the first, 13 years of her life was traditional, the way I was raised. Now, I would not have let her get married. That I did not have that mindset. I also wanted her to get an education. By that time I had gotten an education. I saw the value in that. I didn't want her to have the life I had. I did not want that. I had her and I didn't want my 2 sons to be the men that I had been raised by.
Right.
So they got taught a totally different way of life.
Yeah.
And they're awesome, by the way. My kids are fucking awesome.
I love it.
Well, of course they are.
The best kids on the planet.
And that's because of you.
It is
literally because of you.
They are my absolute world.
Oh my God, I love it.
I could not be prouder. Could not be prouder of any of them.
I mean, you broke barriers for them. You really,
and that's been hard for me to take credit for, because I need to be humble and I don't want to be.
No, stand in your motherfucking power.
Wave a flag, make a flag and wave it.
Exactly. Well, and the truth is, I'm sure before you there may have been small barriers cut along the way. But you were that final straw of enough is enough and I am done. And
I didn't know, like, I think the weird thing about the spiritual or the divine or whatever you want to call it, because I'm not religious at all anymore. But it took me years for the head knowledge to catch up with what I knew. Like what I knew I knew.
Yep.
But then here, the shame, the guilt, the overwhelming, like I went from church to church trying to find the right church. I raised my kids in very conservative religions as they were coming up. It took me I'm still walking out of this. Like I probably always will be, because when you're born with this mindset being taught to you even in the womb. Like I was born in fear of God themselves. And when you're born with that, that's in your DNA, especially the generational, power that was over us being raised that for generations and generations, and the Appalachian mindset. And that is a lot to walk out of. And so I raised my kids in the way that I knew for a long, long time. But my kids are why I'm where I'm at, because I respect my kids and I taught my kids to think for themselves, even though I was still teaching them things that I knew, like I didn't even necessarily agree. I just didn't know a different way. Like that's the only way I knew to present the Bible to them, was the way it was presented to me, except I was seen as way more liberal because I had walked out of a lot of it. But the older I got and the older my kids got, and they were all like, we're not buying this bullshit.
They could smell it.
But you're gonna go to hell. And they're like, but there's no such thing.
Oh my God.
But how beautiful.
They schooled me on so much stuff.
You guys taught each other.
We did. We did. We grew up together. And
yeah, you were willing to learn from your children, unlike your parents being unwilling to learn from you.
Or afraid to learn.
I can't tell you how much I respect my children. And I do what I do because of my children.
I'm sorry, say that again. We got sidetracked because I said your goddamn Hallmark movie, and she said, yeah, HBO special. You need to turn your life into a movie. Okay, what did you just say?
I just said the respect that I have for my children is, and I was at times like, nobody needs a 15-year-old mom. Like, come on, nobody deserves that. I was a 15-year-old mom. I was a 17-year-old mom. I was a 21-year-old mom with the world on my shoulders. There was times I was always a good mother. I'm a good mother. This has taken me like 59 and a half years to be able to say, because I've scrutinized myself to death my whole life. I have been so internal and introspective, and I've always tried to grow and learn. But in that has been so much self-judgment because of the way that I was raised, and the guilt that I've carried for not being a perfect mother has been sometimes almost too much to bear, because I wanted so much better for my kids.
It's so hard too, Cathy, and we talk about this a lot on our podcast about how hard we are on ourselves as mothers and as parents. And I was just talking with I have a young man, and he and his dad are homeless, and his dad was terrified that I was, going to call CPS, or that CPS was going to be called. And I'm like, no, homelessness is not poor parenting. Like, that's not the same thing. But he's like, he's near tears, and he's like, I'm not providing for, like, he doesn't even have a roof over his head. And I'm like, but he has your love and your warmth, and you're figuring it out.
And that's the thing right there. That's the key, is figuring it out. And I see people who, I don't know, like they don't seem to be figuring it out. And I try not to judge people. And it's like they stay stuck, and they let their kids stay stuck, and And I can say this. I can say this about myself. I, honest to God, always did the very best I knew how. I gave my kids the very best I had.
Yes.
And
that was shitty.
Right. But that's where you can't feel the shame. And that's where we have to release that shame and guilt.
Yeah. And I've apologized to my kids. I am more than open about my faults. I have 2 gay kids. I didn't always think that was okay. I have since they've been out. And now I'm like, you go. Like, my daughter had the badassest wedding you've ever seen on New Year's Eve.
And imagine if they were still in the church. Cathy, what would their life look like? It would be miserable. Mm-hmm. They'd have been forced to marry same sex. They'd have been stuck within that, or different sex, opposite gender. Damn it. Forced. I said it wrong.
Words are hard. It's fine.
Yeah.
Oh, that would have been so awful.
That's another thing I learned from my kids. Like, I feel that's the thing is, it's hard to look back and be like, woe is me, because honest to God, y'all, I'm the luckiest person I've ever met. I am the luckiest person I've literally ever met.
That's incredible.
I could pick out a life for myself. It would be the one I have right now.
Tell us about your wedding.
Okay, so we go to Kentucky and we get my marriage license finally. And the only marital advice my mom gave me was I needed to shave my legs.
Yeah. I mean, I was 12 years old when my grandma gave me permission to shave my legs. So
I probably had only been shaving them for about 2 years, maybe. And so my mom's advice was for me to shave my legs for that day. And I knew sex was coming. I had never had sex. But that was another reason that I felt my husband said we had to get married, because I had allowed him to touch me under my clothing. And so that was sexual activity. And then I was bound to him per our religion. So that was another tactic that was used. But so we go to get married at this minister's house that had married my parents.
Oh, so he was a winner.
He was old as dirt. That's what he was. He couldn't hear, he couldn't see. He like shuffles in here. His wife's helping him. And
because she was 20 years younger.
It's me and my mom. My mom was there and some of her sisters were there. My cousins were there. My best friend cousin stood up with me. She was already married. She was like 16. She was already married. And so it starts like starts the, do you take this one, whatever he said, they say. And I was sobbing. Have you seen the movie? It was Drew Barrymore. I think it was called Ever After. The Cinderella. You remember the arranged marriage in that the Asian princess was marrying the guy that she loved, and he loved her, but this was arranged, and this Asian princess loved this other guy, and she was just boo-hooing, like boo-hooing.
I mean, at what point was your then to be husband like,
I don't think she's into me.
I don't think she likes this idea.
I have a hunch.
Everybody in the room, except for my cousin standing next to me, she was like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Oh."
That's just shocking to me.
Sat there like this was the most normal thing in the world. Like,
yeah, like your mom, your aunts, your soon-to-be husband. All of these adults are just like, she's fine. Like, she's got something in her eye. Like,
honestly, Cathy, as a mom, and I know you've put yourself in this situation 1,000 times, which is why probably when your daughter was 13, you're like, fuck this. Mm-hmm. But I just think, what kind of brainwashing would I need to have in order to watch my 14-year-old daughter sob on her wedding day after she's begged me several times to not be married? And
no, I never asked my mom not to be married.
Oh, it was only
him. Yeah.
She didn't have that relationship with mom.
I didn't feel like I didn't have the kind of power to go to my mom and say, I don't want to get married.
Well, but that right there tells you a lot as well. The fact that you couldn't even say it to her. She tells you to shave your legs. You're sobbing. Like, I can't imagine putting myself in that mom's shoes. Like I don't know what would need to happen for me to just completely sacrifice my mothering.
Horrific trauma.
Yeah,
right.
Horrific.
Well, but you also had horrific trauma. You know, there's a lot of people that do.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. I've asked myself, and I've talked to. I don't know what thing has to happen. I mean, I think I was raised, even as backward or whatever you want to call it, as I was raised. I was raised with more support than she had. And I had these older aunts that I watched, even though they were still in that religion and all that stuff. Like they still shunned me and stuff like that. But there had to be some thing in my makeup or in something that somebody had said to me at some point that I don't even remember. Or like this is a testimony, I think, to how important it is for people to have support from somebody. Like you don't ever know the impact you're going to have on somebody just by showing up for them in a tiny way. Because I don't even know why I'm able to do this. Except I always knew that when I looked at my kids, because I was nurtured, I think I got nurturing that my mom didn't get from other women. Like I said, I was in a big community of women. And I really believe that, I don't know, the nurturing, the grit, the ability. I was never told I was never told you're stupid and you don't know how to do anything. They would be like, oh, that's like we were too dumb to know we couldn't do it. We just did it. I mean, they would tell me I couldn't go to college because I wasn't like, you didn't even go to high school. You can't do that. And I was like, yeah, I can. Watch me. Like, I don't know I just think watching my mom and her sisters are very good storytellers. And I've heard stories of strength my whole life. And I think that was the gift. I think that was the gift. And I think sharing our lives with our kids is so important. Like get them off those goddamn phones, put their goddamn stuff,
yes.
Like sit down and talk to
Preach
in their face.
Preach it. Yes.
Like, I'm so thankful that, like I said, I have apologized to my kids for being a shitty mom at times. But there's things that undeniably I did right.
Heck yeah.
Because
heck yeah, you did.
Like I said, I could not even imagine my life. I would not have survived without my kids. I literally would not have survived.
No, they full circled like the second half of your life, it sounds like.
Yeah. And now I have 12 grandchildren.
Oh, look at you. You built your own little tribe.
Mm-hmm. I really have. I was thinking last night with the death of my dad, I'm the oldest, and I don't have anybody. I don't have anybody behind me that is like all of my people, like my literal people, I'm the oldest. Like everybody that I have is in front of me.
You're the matriarch.
Wow. Oh my gosh. Cathy, is there any other things that we didn't ask or that you need to share? That's really all I feel like we need to say.
Oh
my gosh.
I'm
exhausted.
People to know the cultural diversity that's involved in child marriage. People think it's okay. It's illegal in Pakistan. You cannot get married legally in Pakistan under the age of 18. Federally. We don't have a federal law. It's actually a violation of international law for a child to get married. And America still allows it. And it comes at these girls, mostly girls, come from every walk of life. It's because of trafficking, it's because of poverty, it's because of lack of services, it's because of religious ideas. What if the girl gets pregnant? I've been told they don't ban it because if a girl gets pregnant, she should be able to get married, because if she can't get married, she might have an abortion. And they don't.
Oh,
that's
right.
Okay.
There it is. I was like, where does abortion fit into this? Because, yeah. No, so she can't get an abortion, but she can get married.
Well, in states where she can get an abortion, they're afraid that if they outlaw child marriage and a girl gets pregnant, then she'll get an abortion because she can't get married.
But she can't even.
Yeah, the mindset that marriage solves anything is the problem.
Yes.
Marriage solves nothing.
You know what? I love that we are talking to you on International Women's Day. And I know that when this comes out, it will be weeks from now, but I feel so empowered as a woman by hearing your story and seeing your triumph and seeing the message that just your life in general is giving to all of the young women that are experiencing that same or similar trauma.
They can get out of it. I honestly believe that there are circumstances, this is not true, that nothing is ever always true. But by and large, we are the drivers of our own lives. If you are free and healthy, you can get your ass out of a ditch. I don't know what day it is, because you can, and we have the power to do that. And I want to say this too about women, especially since it's International Women's Day. Being an empowered woman is being able to do what you want to do. And if it's being at home and you have that agreement with your partner that one person does the majority of the heavy lifting of the financial part and the other does the majority of the heavy lifting of the homemaking part, great. Great. Like that was mine and my second husband's arrangement most of our lives. I had a really good financial head on my shoulders, and I always had a job. Had tons of jobs. I've been a very successful real estate broker. I made money in that. Like I was not going to get myself in a position again where I could not be independent if I wanted to be. And that's my advice to girls and women. Do not get yourself, and you get your education, you have something you can fall back on, you save money, you have your own bank account, you learn legal stuff if you ever have to have it. Because I fought my way through this divorce and I came out pretty damn good because I'd had a good financial head on my shoulders the whole time. So now I don't have to depend on a man, period, ever in my life for anything.
So Cathy, tell us about the company at which you work.
Yes.
Well, I'm still in healthcare, but I work with the Resiliency Foundation, the nonprofit. There's another one called Unchained at Last. They work with forced and child marriage. We only work with the child marriage, and we try to educate as many people as we can. We try to raise awareness. It's resiliencyfoundation.org. There's a lot of resources on there. You can see what states are legal, what age limits, there's links. We're starting an educational campaign now. We do education with law enforcement, teachers to be able to spot things like this that's happening, whether it's because of human trafficking. Like I said earlier, my case wasn't human trafficking. I do know, I work with women that was their case, is that traffickers can marry their victim and then they can cross state lines and do whatever they want. And if you have a child bride, you're their guardian and they have no power to and so we try to train law enforcement into spotting this kind of thing, this kind of activity. And Indiana is actually very active in that, in having their law enforcement and teachers trained. And there's an Indiana coalition against human trafficking. And I'm going to do some education with them at their conference in I think July, something like that. It's on my Google calendar, but it's in there. Because raising awareness of what happens if these kids show up in the ER, or what happens if you're a teacher and you get this whiff of this is happening. Like if my teachers had been educated, because I did have 2 teachers and I believe that one of them called CPS. Obviously it didn't go anywhere, but nowadays it would be taken more seriously. But if a 14-year-old came in 8th grade now and said, I'm getting married, I think all kinds of hopefully you would think red flags would go up, but the fact that it's still legal in 43 states, maybe not.
What you are is an inspiration. You inspire me. Your story inspires me. And I mean, I feel honored and blessed to even be a part of sharing your journey. Honestly, and I don't say that lightly. I'm not going to blow smoke up your ass. I know you don't know me that well, but I'm very raw and honest and say, obviously, what comes to my mind, whether it is, okay or not.
Same.
Just laughing.
and it's interesting because I have started really talking a lot about my own life and my own journey. And when people tell me that it's inspiring, I think, oh, no, like silly,
That's how I feel.
I know. And so this is such a great experience for me to kind of...
to watch.
Yes, because your and my story could not be more different, yet in some ways have similar aspects.
There's so much of humanity that's so similar. Like there's so much of it that just, like the Matrix, there's something to that. Because, and it's like and even the mindsets of, I don't want to go back and change things because I like where I'm at now. We can hold that as a truth, as well as we can hold that what happened to us was not okay.
Yes.
Like we can hold these two totally opposite truths. Humans can do that. Nobody's making me choose. Like I've had to tell myself, but you don't have to choose. You can love your life now and think that was shitty.
Yes.
Absolutely shitty. And that's why I'm here, is I don't want that to happen to other people, because you can get here without all that shit.
Yes.
Hallelujah. Praise the Lord. Right?
Oh my gosh.
If you think we're cool,
or even if you don't,
please like or subscribe so you'll stay up to date on all things The Shrink Show.
Thank you for choosing to spend a portion of your life with us. And remember, don't take yourself too seriously. Life is all a giant shrink show.
A Huda Media Production.
Side effects of listening to this podcast may include side aches or snorting from laughter, impromptu jazz hands, nodding in agreement even though you might be listening alone, an occasional "you said it, girl," and mild cases of existential dread. This podcast is strictly for entertainment and informative purposes only and is not intended or implied to diagnose, treat, or otherwise substitute for professional mental health, medical, legal, or other advice. Thank you.